I'm Ashley Heidemann from JD Advising, and in this session we're going to talk about how to memorize your bar exam outlines. And we're just going to start with preparing to memorize. So we're going to talk about the very basics of why it's important to memorize bar exam outlines, why most students don't do it, and then how you can prepare to memorize your outlines. So I'm going to start with why it's important to memorize bar exam outlines. A lot of people don't realize that the bar exam does not test general principles of law. It doesn't test, to a large degree, critical thinking and analysis, and it doesn't test, to a large degree, lawyerly skills. So you might be a great lawyer, but the bar exam might be a challenge for you because the bar exam does not test how great of a lawyer you're going to be. The bar exam tends to test and tends to reward people that have memorized the nuances of the law. So it's not enough to have a general picture or a good understanding of the law. You actually have to know the nuances of the law. So it's important to have these memorized. If you memorize these up front, you will save yourself so much time, energy, and frustration. I can't tell you how many students we've had that come to us and they say, I did 100 multiple choice questions and I didn't get a good score, so I've done more and every day I do more, and their score never improves. Pretty soon they're in this vicious cycle of doing 100 questions a day and getting about the same score every time and getting really frustrated and anxious because they're putting in so much effort, but they're not seeing the results. And the reason for that is, even though they're putting in a lot of effort, they're not really studying smart or efficiently. Because the problem is they haven't memorized the nuances of the law, not that they haven't completed enough practice problems, okay? So we're going to talk about how to make sure that you're memorizing enough. But first let's talk about why people don't memorize the law, because this is such a widespread problem. You might say, if this was so important, why wouldn't this be more emphasized? Why wouldn't more people do it? The first reason is people don't memorize the law because they don't know how. A lot of people that go to law school are English majors, political science majors, so they didn't necessarily have a lot of exams in law school that require them to memorize. And then when they go to law school, there's just one exam at the end of the semester, and a lot of law schools now offer open book exams. So it's not really required to memorize. What you need is a good organized outline so you can find information quickly. So it's a skill that people just don't have by the time they get out of law school. The second reason is they're not told they need to memorize. Many commercial bar review courses don't emphasize memorization. They don't say make sure you've memorized your outline before practicing questions or whatever. So they're not really told that it's something they need to do. And then the last problem is a lot of students think they have the law memorized. For example, if I ask a student about joint tenancies, they can tell me all about joint tenancies, the general principles and what they are. But if I say, what are the 4 ways to sever a joint tenancy, they'll just give me a blank stare, okay? They don't know. So that's the last reason, is people think they know more than they do because they understand the law, but they still don't have it memorized yet. So these are the reasons that memorization is kind of a widespread issue among bar exam takers. Now let's talk about preparing to memorize your outlines. When you're preparing to memorize your outlines, the first thing you want is one good outline per subject. I've seen some students, they have like 7 different real property outlines from different companies and they cross-reference them and they drive themselves crazy. Okay, you just need one good, reliable outline. Most students use their lecture handouts from their commercial course. So even if your course gives you, 4 different real property outlines, pick one. And usually your lecture handout is a safe bet. So your lecture handout will probably be around 50 to 70 pages per MBE subject. That's pretty standard. If you try to memorize an outline that's 200 pages, that's too long, okay? Because you're not going to get through all the bar exam subjects if every outline you have is really long. On the other hand, if you're trying to just memorize an outline that's 5 pages, that's too short, okay? For an MBE subject anyway. You're probably looking at something between 50 and 70 pages. Obviously, this could change depending on the font. Like, we use smaller fonts, so our outlines tend to be shorter than 50 pages. Like, many of our MBE outlines are 35 to 45 pages, and that's okay, they have all the information. If a course uses bigger font, their outlines will be longer. Like one course has a real property outline that's 100 pages, but it's really everything's spread out, there's a lot of examples, so it's okay, it's manageable. It's not like it's 100 pages of condensed font. Anyway, so start by using one outline per subject. Typically your lecture handout will be a good resource. The next thing that you want to do is make sure that you understand that subject. We see this happen sometimes where people will have the law memorized, but they have no idea what it means, so they can never apply it. It doesn't happen as often. Usually the problem is people just don't memorize the law, and sometimes they don't understand it either. But one of the critical steps before you start memorizing is actually understanding the law. You want to know what you're memorizing. Okay, so don't just memorize things like evidence hearsay exceptions, but have no idea what they mean or how you would ever apply them. It's helpful to gain an understanding of the law if you go to lecture, if you get a private tutor. Maybe you'll understand the law because you took a great law school class that explained the law, so you still know that law by the time that you get to bar prep. So there's multiple ways that you can gain an understanding of the law. But this is a crucial step before you start memorizing the law. The next step is to memorize the law. So you have a decent outline that you like, that's of appropriate length, and you understand the law for the most part, okay? You don't have to understand every little tiny nuance of law, but you have to have a very good general understanding of the law. Now it's time to sit down and memorize it. What I recommend you do at this point is clear away all distractions. You should not have your phone out. You should not have your TV on. You should clear away all the distractions that you have and just sit down with your outline, maybe some blank sheets of paper, okay, maybe a pen or a highlighter. If you're visual, it's helpful to have different colored markers or pens around you, but your focus should be memorizing your outline. And everything else should be cleared out of the way because memorization is hard work. So you can't multitask. You can't memorize while you watch TV, or you can't memorize while you're checking your text messages. You just have to set aside time to memorize. And the best time of day to do this is when you learn best. So I learn best and I focus best in the morning. So my best time is with a cup of coffee, right when I get up. That's when I do my best work. And memorization is hard. So when I was studying for the bar exam, I would memorize in the mornings because that's when I do my best work and it was easier to complete the process. If I had tried to memorize at night, I would be useless because after 7 p.m. my brain shuts down. For some people, it's the opposite. They're not morning people, but they do great work, at night and sometimes even in the middle of the night. So think about what works best for you because you want to dedicate whenever you work the best to memorization. That's the time you want to leave for memorization. So next, after you're done memorizing, and we're going to talk about memorization more in the next video where we talk about actual techniques, but once you're done memorizing, this is when you practice, okay? This is when you get your multiple choice questions, you get your essay questions out, and you see how you do. This will help you perfect what you know. You'll start to understand some things that you might not have understood fully before. You'll start to memorize things that you might have been struggling with more before, and you'll see how they're tested, so you'll get better at applying the law that you know. And the best way to improve an MBE score, for example, if you're struggling, is to go back and memorize those highly tested areas of law. You'll start to notice much quicker improvement than if you just answer as many questions as you can. Because if you're doing the latter, if you're just answering as many questions as you can, you're kind of flailing about, you're not building that foundation. Versus if you actually work on memorizing first and then practicing the law, then you have that foundation that you're building and you're likely to see your score improve much quicker. So hopefully this helped give you a good background on why it's important to memorize and how to start that process.